I'm Rebecca Canner, author of Last One Seen, and please join us for One Final Twist.
Rebecca Canner is a Minnesota author with her first thriller, Last One Seen, out with Crooked Lane Books this September. She has two previous historical fiction books and a personal essay that received rave reviews and awards, such as the Associated Writing Programs Award and a Loft Mentorship Award. Last One Seen is a Minnesota Star Tribune 5 must reads coming to shelves in September. We were both lucky enough to meet her at BoucherCon, an amazing book conference for readers and writers, and listening to her talk about this book on panels. And we both, Sherry and I both knew as soon as we heard you talk, we had to have this book. We were not, I think we both probably hounded you a little bit at the conference, like, hello, we need that. Would
Yeah,
you care to start and tell us a little bit about the book? So for anybody who's watching who hasn't read the book, kind of give us the meat.
yeah. Well, my protagonist, Hannah, wakes up in the passenger seat of a truck speeding away from a murder scene, and she's not sure if she's being kidnapped or rescued by the man driving, and she's not sure if she committed the murder.
The opening scene, and I use that even in my review, the first sentence, I think it was there are only three people I suspect of killing her, and I am one of them. Something kind of sort of like that. I was like, oh, I'm in. Yeah, we're just gonna. This is one of those books where you're in it and you just regret not sleeping the next day, and we're just all okay with that. So, um, did you know that that was how you wanted to open the book?
No, I didn't know. I had thought of it actually as Eli being the villain in the book. To me, in my mind, he had been like a alcohol at first, like the allure of drinking when you're not supposed to, like some handsome, sexy guy hands you a drink and you're like, yeah, I'm thirsty. So that was the original conception, but it all just ended up blossoming into this whole story. And it's based on my time at graduate school, where I didn't think I might have killed somebody, but there's a lot of dynamics in the graduate workshop. And it's just a really good environment for stories because we're all workshopping stories. And sometimes it feels like we're putting each other in the stories, because a lot of things are at play. You're competing for money, you're competing for attention, you want to be the prof's favorite, you want to sound smart in the workshop. And so this is more than just workshopping each other's stories or kind of like workshopping each other's personalities too. So it's just, I'm surprised there haven't been more books about murder in a graduate workshop.
So that kind of answers the question maybe of where did the idea for this book come from? Is it from personal experience?
Yeah, it is from personal experience. One thing that I was figuring out while writing the book, I have my own mood disorder, and so it's hard as an artist. I want the manic energy of bipolar, but I don't want to go manic and end up hospitalized. But it's just like so many artists have struggled with this because it feels like if you take the medicine you're prescribed, all of it, you're medicating away like your genius, like the party in your head. So it's really hard when you're in a graduate program and it's so competitive and you care. I cared much more about my work than myself. It's hard to explain, but it's like you feel like you are your work, and that's what's going to get shown to the workshop each week. It's not even like you yourself, it's your work. So it's just very hard as an artist to want to take that 100 milligrams of lamotrigine every night. I know if I take a little less, I could be quite productive. May end up like crashing and burning, but it's almost worth it to speed for a while.
So that is a big part of this book because Hannah does have a mental disorder. She struggles with should she take her medication, should she not? Why did you want to make that such a big part of the book?
Well, I think that's a really big struggle for people. And it turns out like I can write without being manic. I can write without alcohol, which is also something I've got to stay away from. I've been sober for 16 years. And so these are like myths, though, that as a writer, like you got to be like Hemingway, he's an alcoholic. You got to be a little crazy. And so it's hard not to buy into those myths. It turns out like, no, I don't need that stuff. But I really had to put it aside for long enough to discover that. So it didn't feel like I wanted to risk it in graduate school. Everything feels so high stakes all the time. And so I do understand Hannah. I did not end up going manic like she went manic and thinking I might have killed somebody. But I have a taste of what it would be like from my own not always taking my medication. Or there was a time when I got confused about pills because they make all these pills look somewhat similar. So you have to be like so careful. And I know I'm not the only one who has had a medication mix up. I actually have a friend and she was taking her Ambien in the morning because she thought it was her antidepressant.
Did you realize, like, and maybe now, the hindsight's 2020 thing, that you would be able to put such a spotlight on these, and I don't want to call it disability, but like these mood. I'm trying to be PR correct with it. Like, you know what I mean? Um, these sort of identity or disorders. I don't, but I mean, you were able to spotlight it and handle it with care and understand what these characters are going through, but be able to like bring awareness to even somebody who doesn't have it, and make it so something that we can talk about it.
Oh, thank you, Teresa. I feel really good about being able to portray it in a way that people who have it can see as authentic, and people who don't have it, who don't have a mood disorder, they can also understand it. And it's a little bit like having a manic episode. If you were to read the book without stopping, you might feel that way, but it's like actually a safe manic episode because as the reader, you can close the book and then at some point you're done with it. Whereas a person actually suffering from bipolar disorder, if they're not medicated, they don't get to end the book. Like their life is going to continue to be up and down. And I'm just happy that I've been able to convey to people what it's like. And I'm really happy when people who have bipolar reach out and say that they really appreciated the book because I feel like a lot of times people have written about characters they don't actually know about. Like a lot of people, if you don't have bipolar disorder, you're probably not really going to understand it. And it could be used in a way that makes the plot, really exciting or the character villainous or confusing. But I just prefer when I'm reading something to know that the author is conveying something from personal experience.
So this story is told in dual timeline. It's not very far apart, dual timeline, but it is, and that's actually one of my favorite ways to read a book is dual timeline. So why did you choose to use that method for this book versus one of the many methods out there?
It really came to me that way as a dual timeline, and I felt like that was a good way to convey kind of the confusion, the this is what it's like when she's normal, when she's medicated, this is what it's going to turn into, and how does it get there? So that's part of the mystery too. How do we get from point A to point B?
So this book was a Walmart Canada Book of the Month. Um, what month was it, and how did you find out about that?
That was in November. And I really only found out at BoucherCon. I met with Matt, the head of Crooked Lane Books, and he told me, and I was so excited because I had no idea that was even a possibility. And that's one reason it's so nice to have a traditional publisher. At some point, I would certainly be open to self-publishing, but those are the things that would be really hard if you were self-publishing. I don't know if Walmart Canada would be how you would get through to them, so I'm so grateful that happened. I don't know how it happened. I'm really grateful to my publisher.
So Sherry will ask some of these kind of questions too, but your Instagram is kind of blowing up. And so on Saturday or Sunday, I'm through the feed and I see, so what happened with your brother?
Mm.
Something happened. I missed what happened, but I saw the message. I saw your post. Like what I don't. So what happened with it? It was did he? Is everybody hitting on him? Was it that?
Oh yeah. And I did not know. I did not know my brother was so hot because to me he's 5 years younger, I changed his diapers. I've seen his like poop in his diaper. I'm never going to understand how he's hot to someone, but he posted on Psychological Thriller Readers Group. He had my book and it said, "This is my the twist got me face. I skip leg day for this." And it
Uh,
blew up and I couldn't even believe it. I looked at it. I was like, "Oh, okay, there's a couple of likes here. Okay." Then there were like 100, then there were 200, then there were 300, and the comments were just wow. They had to shut down the comments. A lot of them were, like, "Hey, it looks like Vin Diesel." I didn't know The Rock was in this group, but a couple of them got a little too spicy. And right after one that I won't even tell you what it said, the commenting was shut off. And so we just read it and we were just laughing all weekend.
I did.
It's
He was at the. It was at the top, like the top of the feed. When you come on, I was like, "What in the world have these two gotten into?" I didn't know.
No, it was great. And a whole bunch of people knew about my novel for the first time from that post. I even like posted it, on TikTok. I just joined TikTok. I don't really have any followers or do anything much yet. But someone's like, "I had to go read your novel after seeing this." And I won't lie, it's because of your brother.
So, what is your Instagram handle for those that don't know yet?
Yeah, Rebecca Canner 1, REBECCAKANNER 1.
So, besides your brother posting pictures, I've been loving your Instagram videos. Your on the way to work. How do you come up with the ideas for those?
I have more ideas than I have time to record. So I just have to choose between them. The one on my way to work, it's like, I'm a writer. I would love to write full time, but that's just not the case. I need health insurance and things are different. My first two novels, I was able to live off the advances. Now I'm in the thriller genre with the market has changed or something has changed and I need a paycheck every couple weeks. So on Monday morning I have to do what I have to do to get myself up and in my car and ready to work for it's not a 9 to 5. There's no such thing. It's an 8 to 4:30. And so I just pounded a Celsius, got in my car, and I have Little John on because that really gets me going. And I have something that holds my phone for me. So I just hit record and there it is. But a lot of times I record a whole bunch of stuff and I never post it because it's ridiculous. And I have so many cat videos and puppy videos. I had to buy extra storage. Um, my boyfriend's two dogs, and two dogs love each other very much. They have puppies. So my whole phone is just full of puppy videos. And I'm thinking, like, I need to just put some out there to clear my phone. And then I don't know if there's a way to tie it into my brand. It's very hard to just think of myself as having a brand with my novel because I feel like I'm got all these things. I mean, mostly I'm an animal freak. I love cats, I love dogs, but the whole idea of branding is very hard for me. So I think I'll have to just continue doing what I'm doing, which is just posting what I want and hoping somehow to, make it coherent because I love just interacting. My aunt is an actress, and my mom was very dramatic. She would never bore you with the truth. Like she was very worldly. She spoke Spanish, French, Portuguese. She met all these people and she told me stories. I don't know if they're true, but they were really interesting. So I just do what I find interesting. And, we all want to be entertained now to just get away from the outside world. It's nice to just escape. And so I'll find myself too scrolling on TikTok and I watch a lot of animal videos actually because it makes me happy. I also like to hear about books because that's another escape. My first love was reading. That got me through really hard times as a young adult where I just hated everything. I didn't like myself. I didn't like the people around me. I didn't like public school, but I could lose myself in a book. I had VC Andrews with me all the time. I would be in class, I'd have my science book or whatever open, and VC Andrews was hidden inside, and I would just be reading, and I would inhabit that world because it was so much better than this one. It was all dark and creepy, but it was still better than being an adolescent.
If my mom found out that I was reading VC Andrews even now, I would get a whooping. And I loved it. I thought if you compared that to like what I read now, I mean it's really tame, but I thought I was getting away with something really big,
Mhm.
back in the day.
My mom loved those books too, and she also loved Sidney Sheldon. He has 7 novels. I just took them from her, read them each, maybe a day at most, was all it took. Danielle Steele, I will admit, I read a lot of Danielle Steele. I read Judith Krantz. I read Dean Koontz, Stephen King. I didn't like anything that was too tame. Nancy Drew, I was like, Party Boys. I liked adult stuff. I like dark stuff.
Did you always know you wanted to be a writer?
Oh yeah, started writing when I was in elementary school, and it was just, it was absolutely terrible though. I won't be like I was some prodigy and I wrote brilliant things in elementary school. I tried to rewrite White Fang, and I couldn't figure out like how you get from one scene to the next without recording every detail. So it was so boring and it was so long. And I turned it into my teacher, and she, of course, told me it was great. And that's good because it encouraged me. And I figured out about white space. I don't have to follow a character everywhere. It can have scenes. But yeah, it was so nice. I was able to write, and no one told me it was terrible.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, I mean, kids, sometimes it's okay to have some white lies, whether it's kids or, women in their jeans or whatever, like life is hard. Say nice things to people.
Are any of the characters, you may not be able to answer that question though. So I know that when you were talking about graduate school, it kind of mimics, some of the things that were in the books. I had no idea that you had those workshops and the criticisms and the things that went along with it. So are any of the characters in your book based on people that you went to school with?
Well, yes, Justine is based on someone, and I'll say more that she was like a composite of the worst traits of some of the people in graduate school. But this one person in particular, who she is based on, I'm sure now that woman and I would be friends and we would just laugh about graduate school. But at the time, it's really cutthroat, it's really hard. And as a writer, it's really nice that you can write things how you want to on the page. It's kind of like you can recreate it as you want it to be. Although I never would have wanted her to actually be murdered. The thought that she would be murdered and be like, well, who did it? I know there's multiple people who might want to. Which of them did it? And the professor, okay, so that professor, he has passed away now. So I'll say that was Professor Charles Newman, who he was a wonderful professor in the sense that you felt like anything was possible around him. It was a great adventure, but the workshop was not traditional. For instance, he wanted to be drinking and smoking a cigar, so it could not be on campus. And you would just get told at the last second where it was going to be, somebody's house or a bar. And so if you were low on the totem pole or people didn't like you, you wouldn't even learn where it was going to be. So yeah, he and I was drinking through part of graduate school, and he and I would go out. And I remember we got kicked out of bars because we were just both so loud and obnoxious. And I don't hear about that as much with professors anymore. So this was, 2004. And I think things are a little tamer now from what I understand. And that's good. That's good, but it's not as much material.
Yeah, I bet you have some really good material from your trips with him.
Yeah, he was kind of flirtatious, so that also I think nowadays he would be fired, but at the time that was more normal.
So you've also gone to a couple civilian police academies.
Mm.
Tell us about that.
So this last one I went to was amazing. Sheriff Dewana Witt is the Hennepin County first Black woman to head the sheriff's department. She is hardcore. I love that she believes in being tough on crime. So, Hennepin County, for people who don't live in Minnesota, that encompasses Minneapolis and some of the surrounding cities. And Hennepin County they go by different rules than Minneapolis Police Department. So in Hennepin County, if you're a danger and you're driving, they can actually drive into you to stop you. The Minneapolis police, they can't do that. So they'll call in Hennepin County. So I just felt like when I was taking that civilian academy, like they're tough on crime. They're not afraid to talk about what they need to do. And it was an amazing experience. We also got to hear what the 911 operators there deal with, and they're always hiring. So people were listening carefully, like, "Ooh, what do you have to do?" And I think I'm not the only one who was like, "No, never, never." The most incredible experience was the simulation. So there were too many people for us all to be on the range at the same time. So instead, you do a simulation. It's like an omni theater, and the police officer who's controlling the whole computer system, he will make different things happen based on what you do. So we were told pretty much, what we should aim for in terms of taking control of the scene and figuring out how to react. And I think one purpose of the exercise is to show you how fast a police officer has to act and that they don't even know what's going on sometimes because everything is happening. You have like half a second to make a decision. So one of the scenarios was a man is at a park, he's yelling, and I go to see what's going on. I'm thinking, oh, I want to de-escalate. I don't want to seem hostile. So I'm like, hello, sir. And then you're supposed to ask their name and use it. What is your name? Well, he's already run towards me and killed me with a knife in this scenario because they don't have that much time. So then there was another scenario I was in with somebody who is in training to be an actual police officer. And that was a courtroom situation where there were shots fired in the courtroom, and you go and you try and take control of the scene. Again, you don't know really what's happening. So to see from the perspective of a police officer is really intense. It's very easy to, hear something on the news and you feel like you know about it and this person should do that and that. No, it's all happening so quickly. And my boyfriend did it with me, and he was also really moved by that experience. His dad was a police officer, and it really helped him understand his dad and what his dad went through.
What made you want to do that? Was it like to research for a book, or I mean, self-defense, or to, maybe did they like to learn to respect what they go through?
Yeah, definitely. I have friends who are police officers, so that got me curious about it. And then this next novel I'm working on, one of the characters is a female homicide detective. So I want to see things from her perspective. It's not the same as the civilian academy. Obviously, I'm not in depth. I'm not a homicide detective, but I'm getting some surface information and being able to picture what's going on. And so going to this Hennepin County Sheriff's Office was such an amazing experience. And I feel like I'm going to really be able to write that character with so much more depth than if I just, Googled up, what is it like to be a female homicide detective? Like, no, I want to experience it. And I met people, I made connections. So I'm going to be able to continue talking to people, getting information. And the other part of research for that novel, I'm less comfortable with. So in this novel I'm working on now, which I've just loosely titled Forbidden Women, there's the female homicide detective, and there's a woman who's a floor manager of a strip club. And so they clash after dancers start disappearing from the club. The female homicide detective sees the club as part of the problem. The woman who's the floor manager says, well, actually, I came here and I improved this club. This club used to be really dangerous. Now I'm here advocating for the dancers because I used to be one. So it was really nice to have those two characters go at it to really like get into the meat of it. And is this strip club bad for women? So the hard part then will be the research for the stripper because I'm not overly excited about going to a strip club, but also I think it would be irresponsible of me to fully write out this character without that information. And I have also took taken some like introductory dancing pole classes, but I may do more of that because it's actually very athletic and hard. People might think it's just titillating, but wow, you need a lot of muscle and core stability to get yourself up on that pole, and I'm 49. So at this point, I'm not working with, the 26-year-old body that is probably the oldest stripper there is. I'm working with this 49-year-old body, and I know that I've got to go where the story takes me and write out the characters in a way that's fair and thorough. So got to do what I got to do.
So that book is what's next in the pipeline for you?
Yep. And so I'm kind of cautiously optimistic about it. My agent talked to my publisher and they said, well, we got to see how this first book does. So come back in February. So I'm just taking my time, really working it out. I've got a little more research, the stripping part to look into. So I have time to do that. And I'm just going to make sure when this book is ready, it's really ready because I feel like as an author, I never really think it's ready, but at least if I have labored over it and put all the research I can into it, it'll feel a little better. But like even when I was reading the first couple pages of Last One Seen at BoucherCon, I was like, ooh, I see something. I wish I would have moved that here and put a comma here and taken that out. So it's done when the deadline comes up.
Are you glad that you switched over to the thriller world? Or is it like, how do you feel about switching? Is it hard? Is kind of tell us the difference in the two.
It's hard to disappoint people. I got a really, really long message from somebody on Facebook just saying how much she had been moved by my previous works and that she was going to distribute Esther, a biblical retelling I wrote, to women behind bars, just put people in touch with courage and God. And so she just said she's so disappointed to see I've moved into the thriller genre. And I haven't responded yet. I want to give a really careful, kind response because I so appreciate that she got so much out of Esther that she wanted to spread that book to women behind bars. It's just part of, I guess, growing as a person that sometimes you disappoint people. But for me, I've got to see what it's all about. I wanted to write a thriller. I've got to do it. Your publisher will be very conservative. They want you to write the same thing over and over until you die because, hey, we know how to sell that. That's your brand. But just as a person, I feel like I have to explore every avenue and try different things. So I do feel bad if anybody is disappointed in the thriller, if they're more religious. I did talk to a book club who really loved Esther. And so they were quite shocked by Last One Seen. And I said, maybe I should have warned you guys. They're religious women, retired. Maybe I should have warned you guys because I do feel like people should know what they're getting into. And so it can be different audiences. But I've had many people say they really liked my biblical feminist retellings and they like Last One Seen, but there's the chance that some people will find it, not very different. They won't find it uplifting. Whereas I actually feel like Last One Seen is uplifting because the character who has bipolar finds out how to manage it and how to take control of the situation. And it's definitely not a good girl uplift. It's like, I'm going to grab this situation by the balls and make my way out of it successfully. So very, very, very different than Esther, but I still felt like a victory, just a strange one for people who are more traditional.
I can't tell you how many times I've heard either at a conference or even just this few times that that we're recording this one final twist, how many authors are saying that they feel like they have to stay in their lane. And I get used to a certain thing, but I don't know how to explain. So Amakatsu was one And that she said, her last book, Fiend, didn't it wasn't nearly as dark as the other ones, and she says she has to feel like she stays in her lane. So I think that's a must be a common thing, and it bothers me, I guess, as a reader for you, because I think you should put out what you feel that you're meant to write, and try it out, step in it. How do you know you like sushi if you don't ever try sushi? Like, feel it out. If it doesn't work, it just doesn't work.
Yeah, I think the issue is money, because your publisher invests in you and they want the investment to pay off. And if they know they can sell one type of book, that's the type of book they want you to keep writing. And my publisher for Sinners in the Sea and Esther was like the religious imprint of Simon and Schuster, Howard Books. So I knew they weren't going to be publishing this thriller. We had to show it to them because they have right of first refusal, but it's not their thing. They immediately were like, no, no, no. And then this new publisher has taken a chance on me. But I can see why some publishers are like, sorry, we're doing one type of promotion. We know this audience or that audience, they're all the imprints have a specialty. And so it's kind of like just social media in general, or like I have trouble with TikTok, I have to be a brand, I have to be like one thing. And I just don't feel like I can fit myself into that box. So it probably from a marketing standpoint would be better to just do the same thing over and over again until you die. But my mind would just go crazy inside my head. I've just got to try new things. And so I do feel really steady in the thriller genre right now. But if in 10 years I want to try horror or romance or something, I'll do it.
I personally like it when authors write outside of their normal genre. Because I always like to see how they transition from one to the other, and plus it gives it opens them to a whole new audience too. But I do see the point from the publisher. If they've already invested you as marketed as a thriller author, and then all of a sudden you're writing romance, it's a little bit harder for them. But I think it's good when authors write outside of their genre, and I've honestly seen quite a few lately that have kind of strayed from their normal genre. So
I'll have to check those out. Yeah, I do see that there's now an interest in speculative fiction. So my publisher, Crooked Lane Books, they put on Publishers Marketplace that they're looking for a senior editor in speculative fiction. So I'm thinking that might be something that's getting more popular, or they think it's going to get more popular. So they're wanting to make sure they're in that market.
What kind of advice would you give yourself, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, that would help you get to where you are today?
Just sticking to it, because as a writer, you're probably going to get a whole bunch of rejection before anybody is interested in you, and so not taking it personally. And I also believe that it can be subjective, and some people who are great authors, they may never get a publishing contract. They should self-publish, because so much of it is who you know. I'm not in New York. A lot of people aren't in New York. They're not going to know people in the publishing industry. They might not know those big time agents. So I just feel like you've got to believe in yourself and not take it completely personally if you don't have an agent or publisher interested in you, because a lot of it is just based on location and who you know. So I hope that people realize their writing might be amazing. They just haven't been lucky with, where they're located, who they know. It is good to go to different conferences and network, but at the end of the day, if that doesn't happen for someone, it doesn't mean that their work isn't good.
now I want to talk about this cover. Because the first time that I saw this cover, even before I heard you talk about it, I saw the cover and I said, I have to read it just based on the cover. I knew nothing about it. So, how did you come up with the cover, or did you have any input in the cover?
Rebecca Nelson at Crooked Lane Books came up with the cover. There were a couple of revisions. Let me see if wonder if I even have the first one they showed me. Okay, so this is the first one, and there's something down here. I didn't know what it was. It's a book.
Okay.
And to me, that's great. She's reading while driving. I won't admit to it, but that may have happened some occasionally. So I just said I'm a little confused by this, and then I said maybe there should be some headlights up here. And so they went ahead and made those edits, and all was well. So I think as an author, you might not have that much control over the cover if you're traditionally published, but it does seem like they'll work with you a little bit. My previous novels, Sinners in the Sea, Howard Books of Simon and Schuster offered me two different covers, and I got to choose, and one was just so obviously the right one. And then Esther, they were like, "Do you like this?" I said, "Yeah," and we just went with it.
So between the learning how to be a stripper and getting ready for your next for the next book, what are you reading right now?
So if you don't mind, I can go grab it and show you.
Yeah, show
Yeah.
us.
I hate to even mention this because it's a series and there are so many of them, but this is so good. I'm going to have to force myself to step away from this series. This is the Monkey Wrench series by PJ Tracy. PJ Tracy is two people. It's a woman who is now writing the series and her mom who has passed. And there's a killer who's out killing people, clearly inspired by a video game. And this has come out a while ago. So if you're looking for, exactly how things work technology wise now, no, this isn't for you. But I think what this one is about is the characters. I was at a conference with PJ Tracy and Matt Goldman, and they were saying, people forget the plot. They remember the characters, and these characters are so incredibly funny that even if you didn't even know what was going on and you're just reading or listening to a chapter, you would be entertained. Um, the one thing with this, I also got the Audible because the print is so small. So I wanted to bring this back and get the trade paper, but it's already been made out to me. So I actually, if I want to read this one, I use a magnifying glass, but I love it on Audible. The reader is really good. And then I'm reading something everybody is reading coming out in February of 2010, The Better Mother. This is also published by Crooked Lane Book, and it's by Jennifer Van Der Kloot, who was at BoucherCon, and I met her at the Crooked Lane Books party. Um, then I'm reading something nonfiction, Sociopath, a memoir. And this book is eye-opening in that, autism can be on a spectrum, different things can be on a spectrum. So I think of a sociopath as somebody who is like completely without any empathy. And that's not exactly the case for this character. And so she has to fake a lot of normal human emotions, but she does care about, for instance, her sister. That seems to be the one person she cares about. And so it's just interesting. I think in some ways there are benefits to her sociopathology, just like in my novel, Hannah's Mania. Well, there are benefits as a writer to her, she feels. And so here, as a sociopath, you're not always worried about, oh, did I look at him the wrong way? Did we have an unpleasant interaction at the grocery store? Is so and so mad at me? Did I hurt so and so's feelings? So it was just interesting to see, not all of sociopathology is terrible. We could maybe all stand to be a little bit more sociopathic, at least in terms of not overly worrying about, did I look at someone sideways or are they mad at me? So those are the three books I'm currently reading.
Do you usually have more than one book going at a time?
Yes, I usually do, and I'll also be listening to different things on Audible, so it takes me a long time to get through books. I think, sometimes when I'm at the end, then I'm just reading that book. But until I'm at the end, I'm kind of promiscuous. I could read this night and that night and this the next night. And then towards the end, I'm just reading the same book.
If a reader wanted to get a signed copy, do you have them available on a website or maybe a local bookstore where they could have one sent to?
Yeah, Once Upon a Crime in Minneapolis. It's an independent bookstore. They only sell mystery, family owned, and also my editor works there.
Oh,
She had been with Crooked Lane Books, but she isn't anymore. She is doing freelance editing and she's a bookseller at Once Upon a Crime. She's there every Monday. And the great thing about Once Upon a Crime, they recommend books. So, you can get a signed copy of my book there. You can talk to them about what you like, and they will go ahead and tell you what else you'll like. They just really know. They're very widely read. So yeah, Once Upon a Crime in Minneapolis, there are signed copies there, and they're a great business to support.